Mr. Benga and Yabo Olufela, married 31 years.
Woo, praise the Lord. 30 years. Round of applause for your Lord for the last 31 years. Okay, you got it already. Okay. All right. And
Pastor Toby at Ignite Church NYC, and just met me, and been married since 2012. So this year is going on 8 years, and been awesome.
praise God. For those who don't know me, I'm Evangelist Lee. By the grace of God, I've celebrated 10 years of marriage this year, and I serve at the church here, Christ Apostolic Church First in America, here in Brooklyn, New York. So let's get started. And I'm going to go with the newest couple on the newest married couple on the panel. So I feel like before we get married, we have expectations and beliefs about marriage based on our experiences and the different ways that we experience marriage, what we see, what we observe in movies and stuff like that. So I want to start with you guys. What was your impression of marriage before, and then what was it after? Did it match? Was it different?
Hi. For me, I looked at my parents growing up. My parents were right there. And I would say that I had a really good impression of marriage through my parents. They were really loving. Like, I learned love through them. Not saying that they were perfect. I've seen how when they had fights, how they were able to reconcile. My parents were really unique where they did everything together. They were always together. They built a business together. But one thing that really stood out and kind of trickled down to us as children was the fact that my dad spoiled everyone in his family. He spoiled my mom. He spoiled me to the point where, like, he will wear our burdens on his back. So then when it was time for me to start looking for marriage or looking for someone, I made it hard for people. I made it really, really, really hard where, I felt like, you don't need to do that for me. Like, the average charm that a guy would give a girl, like, it wouldn't work for me because I'm like, my dad could do that, or I could do that by myself. And that worked for some time, but I remember one Valentine's Day in college, I found myself very, very single and very, very alone. And I actually felt really, I really, really felt bad about that. And I'm just like, what's wrong? Like, I don't understand. And I realized, like, that was like a light bulb moment where it's just like, yeah, you can't be like that. You actually have to, put yourself out there and understand that everybody's not going to be like your dad, but everybody has something to offer. So then when I went into marriage, it kind of also carried over into marriage, and we had several talks, and he had to remind, me that, what, you have to learn how to relinquish your power. You have to realize that, I am not your father. We're two different people, and you have to, respect me for who I am. And that was my image of marriage.
I don't hear that often, that somebody's dad set the bar way too high.
Yeah,
that nobody
no,
can. That's very
dad,
interesting.
my
I usually
dad-
hear like parents, like, you're not good enough to marry my daughter and that sort of thing.
My dad.
But you had it the other way around. That's wonderful. That's interesting. What about you, Deji? What do you think?
Yeah, so my impression definitely was my family as well, my parents. The discipline that I seen, the patience, the nurturing. They were, everything was always, structured. So there was no, it was limited room for mistakes. But at the same time, just seeing how, it's like when God blesses you, you see why. The sacrifices that they make, especially when it comes to church. Me, I remember growing up, everything was about church. I started playing the drums I was probably 8 years old. So going to choir practice, being in there, being a nuisance, probably running up and down, making all types of noise. But seeing the sacrifices that they made for the church, seeing the sacrifices that they made for their family, for us, definitely grew, and it was embedded in me. So when it came to finding a wife, those were the things that I knew were going to play a big role. The sacrifices, the commitment. And being in marriage now, it's funny because seeing it growing up, it looks so easy. It looks so easy. Being in marriage, man, it like you have to be so intentional, intentional, day by day. Like there's never a time where you could just be comfortable. Like, you know what? I told her that she looked beautiful yesterday. I gotta tell her today. But it's really, it's a day by day learning experience. And as much as we've been together, I think we've been together for what, 8 years? 10 years? Really? Wow.
The men always get that question wrong. It's funny because usually somebody else asks. He set himself up for that. Like you didn't have to go there, but we thank God. Anyway, continue. Yeah.
We've been together so long, and I'm still learning. So it's not something that I would use the analogy of me, because I played basketball. I've trained so hard in high school and in college and going overseas, and people would say, once you make it to the professional level, you just started. So all that training is literally for you to get into that next chapter, and that's the beginning phase. So in marriage, like once we set our vows and we have become one, it was literally the beginning of us. So yeah, it's some work. Yeah.
Mommy, what about you guys? Your impression of marriage beforehand, and then actually, since you guys have been married so long, you've got a longer range to look back at, So I wonder if can you even remember your impressions, because what you lived has taken over. But what do you think?
I can.
Okay.
And I just wanted to attest to Timmy's parents' marriage because we grew up together, and that's a true example. And I was blessed like she was. My father, 3 marriages stood out to me growing up. My parents' marriage was really, it's after I got married that I saw some flaws in certain things, but they were perfect. I mean, my father was a pastor, maybe, I don't know. It was just a perfect marriage. They fought, but it wasn't anything like I saw in the world eventually. Then my uncle, both of my uncles, they're deceased now, but the way they took marriage, it was just something that you aspire for. I have one uncle that they never called each other by first name. My dear, my dear, my dear, my dear was what they called each other. Dr. Fadeji, he's with the Lord now. Then my other uncle that I came to stay with in America, Daddy Ogundero, I lived with them. Again, that was awesome experience. So my bar was like really high. My expectation was so high, like no man's business. It was just a shock after I got married that he was not my dad and he wasn't my uncle. And but you know what? God just it made it work for me. 31 years. He was not my dad. He was not my uncle, or neither of my uncles. But he had the attributes that I needed God to open my eyes for, to see that I was really attracted to him based on the things that came natural to me from my dad being a family man and a dedicated man, and my uncles they did things like my uncle in America, he did all the grocery shopping, everything, and my husband does that to the point that I would say, no, you didn't do that right, and he'll still go back and do it with no complaint. So while I was shocked for certain things, when all was said and done, the same attributes that I saw growing up in my parents and my uncles was really what attracted me and what some of the things that have kept us going.
Sorry to disappoint all of you. I grew up in a polygamy. Yeah, my dad had 12 wives. Legal. Yes. Yeah, so he was not a role model for me when it comes to marriage. My mom was the first wife, of course. Got married in 1942. So I could never go near my dad. None of the children could go near him. So it was a rich man. We had a big house. So you have to be leaping through the window to see, hello, hello. If it catches you looking, go to your brother. Like, that was how I grew up. So, and I vowed to change things, you know. So, my sister came from the U.S. in 1978, you know. So, and I saw how they did things. The husband will be like Daddy Oyedeji said. My sister's husband will be cutting okras, you know, and then my sister will be boiling water and stuff like that. So that was what inspired me to be what I have grown up to be. And in a nutshell,
So you had a bad example, but you saw something that you wanted to aspire to, essentially. Pastor Toby, what do you think about that? Can you talk about how our backgrounds impact what we bring, you know, to our attitude of marriage?
I was, as we were going around, I was like, this is great. This is all sounding like sunshine and roses. When is that? And then when he swore, I was like, that's it right there. That's it right there. And the reality is that, sometimes the path that God leads us on to become who we should become is not always the wonderful, straight, and narrow. It is sometimes God says, you know what, for you, maybe God said, you know what, for you to really get it, you have to have been through this type of experience, because maybe if you went through that kind of experience, you would have taken that for granted. But because of the things that God needed to do in your life, not just in your family, but in the church, and so on and so forth, he needed to completely ground your 2 feet so that you knew experientially what the standard was not, so that you could make a direct, not like you just fell into a good marriage or just like stumbled into a good marriage, but it was that you were escaping from something. It was intentional. It was ever before you, and so you are ever careful to not become that. And so for all of us, we have to appreciate the journey. We have to appreciate the journey, and we have to take what we can from the journey that is good and leave the bad behind. But I meet people all the time who say things like, well, you know what, he came from that kind of family background, so I can't touch that. And sometimes I'm like, that could be the reason why you actually make it, right? And so before you engage, or rather before you disengage, give people the fair shot so that you can know who the person has become because of what has happened. As they always say, it's not what happens to us, it's who we become from those experiences. So we don't judge people, we don't write people off because of the experiences that they've had. We look at them for who they've become, right?
That's powerful. I think everybody watching might expect that he would get into a polygamous, like he might adopt that as a lifestyle for himself. He's got every excuse to, sort of do that, but he went in a different direction. So I think that's powerful. One of the things that Pastor Todd talks about in the book, we were inspired to start this series because of the book Relationship Goals by Michael Todd. He talks about the oneness in marriage. He said that initially he believed that marriage is supposed to be two halves coming together and they make a whole. There's a famous movie, famous line in the movie Jerry Maguire, if anybody's seen it, he goes, yeah, exactly, there you go. He goes, you complete me. So that was his impression. And then he said that what he learned instead was it was more like two people take 100% of themselves. So it's a one person with God in the middle at the center of it all, and and they all become one. So the way he writes it is that 1 + 1 + 1 = 1, which is kind of strange. So let me start. I'll start with you guys. So do you agree with that? Do you disagree? What does oneness mean, and what does it look like in your marriage?
Well, from the one experience that I had, you have to go by what it says in the Bible, because it says a man will leave his father and mother and be joined with his wife. And that's the origin of it, and that's all it is. I have always believed in that. And then when I met my father-in-law in 1989, he emphasized that, he strengthened that, he just, you have to admit him. He was a fantastic man. He gave me God, he gave me religion, he gave me everything. And then I bought into it. That's all I can tell you. Oneness, I saw it with my sister, and it has worked. You know, sometimes you have flaws. We're human beings. I do this, she does that, and then, but at the end of the day, it works. You know. So.
I guess for me, it took me a while to really understood the meaning of the word, because I think it was in seminar that we went to, the marriage retreat that we went to. I would just have this revelation drop upon my spirit. Well, that was one of the events where it was solidified, what God dropped upon my spirit a long time ago. Again, we came from different background, and my standard was like really huge. And he was just not checking out the boxes for me initially. And while I truly believe that we shall become one, and I had nobody to talk to, glory be to God. I didn't have anybody to be saying, oh, did you see what he did for me? I journaled a lot. Like, I would write everything down. I saw my journal 2 days ago, and I said, oh, this is timely. Everything that he was not, that I was looking for, how he just couldn't get me, he just couldn't understand, and how could I submit to what was just not familiar with me. But thank God for Christ, because when you have Christ in you, and that's what you seek after, to help you even in the dire situation that I initially found myself, then the meaning of the oneness will come. Because he used to joke and said, I am the Christ of this family. And I'm like, how could you be the Christ? Like, really? Seriously? But then it became very apparent to me eventually that for this to work, my vows, even though he's the representation of Christ, my life belongs to Christ. And then that's what started gelling things for me. Yeah, we did have such a some things, because again, the way he grew up was like, so what's the problem? And I'm like, no, there is a problem. You're not listening to this. And then eventually, though, Christ revealing to me what that oneness means is, even as you look at him, you're looking at yourself as well. You have to bring yourself together. Nobody completes you, but you together, knowing that you are chasing after Christ. That gets revealed to you eventually what that oneness means. And that's what helped me, because if we look at the way that we were initially starting, we were just from two different worlds. You know that men are from Mars. That was so true for us eventually, but Christ showed me, no, you are from the kingdom and you are kingdom bound. And that's what I had to realize.
Let me ask you, because I believe that everybody starts a marriage wanting it to work, right? And
It is work.
And wanting to get along. And I think what you said is powerful and it's really important, but I want to bring it down to the practical, everyday levels. Let me ask you this. For those who don't know, and you might not, Mommy is a doctor. She got a PhD, right?
Okay.
So, it's like people are afraid of losing their individuality once they become married. Now they got all their fate and all their aspirations tied into this other one person. So you have a PhD.
Yeah.
What did that look like that allowed you to pursue your calling and for Daddy also to pursue his while trying to be one, even though it might take you in different directions?
So remember when I said that we were from two different places, and I said when all was said and done, the virtues that attracted me to him is exactly what I needed for myself. That's what all of the three men that were my role model had. My husband, I watched my dad supported my mother going back to school with 3 children, going back to school and acquired all this other education that she eventually acquired. Little did I know my husband would do the same thing. By all glory be to God, I married a man that would say, go on, I got you. Go on, I got you. I mean, during I got you, it could be like, what did I get myself into? I lived him with 3 toddlers, 2 in diapers, and I went back to nursing school. It was hard, but by the grace of God, many people said many things to us, and we had many serious discussions, if we call it that, not fights. But what will come out of it is, he was hearing stuff outside that you're putting yourself through this. Nurses don't have husbands; they leave their husbands, and I will be like, wait a minute, and he doesn't talk much. I would be like, wait a minute, I thought we were doing this together. When did it become you're doing it? But then through it all, we had major conversations where it then became real to the both of us that the sacrifice that one makes is for the family, not for you as an individual. He was doing 2-3 jobs at that time because that's what he felt he had to do to continue to support the family while I was. So yeah, it wasn't easy. But after the bachelor's though, after the nursing degree, the first degree in nursing, master's, PhD, anytime I go back, I want to go to school, he goes, go ahead. So it became easier eventually, thank God.
In terms of your individual purposes and what you feel called to, how do you guys balance that or fit that together in the idea of being one unit?
So we now know and now understand that oneness is two wholes coming together under God in submission to God. But in the beginning of our marriage, we did not have that idea at all. We knew the definition of marriage. We knew what marriage was in the beginning of our marriage, but coming into it, it's like in the beginning we were individuals. It's like I still have my passions. I'm still chasing my dreams. At the time, I was still studying for my exam. So I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna do this over here. And it's so funny, we just had this discussion like recently. I'm gonna do my thing over here, and I'm gonna study, train, do everything that I wanna do, and you do what you have to do. And I remember him saying that, I'm just gonna take care of my end of the bargain. And that did not sit well with me. I was just like, what do you mean? Like, something about that felt like a division. I take care of my end of the bargain, you take care of your end of the bargain. And I'll just keep it real. During that time when I was studying for the NCLEX, me feeling like I was in it by myself is what caused me to not pass the test the first time. I felt like the burden was on me that I had to keep up my end of the bargain. And it just put so much pressure on me when it came to him, not just him, my family. So I was just like, let me just study, let me pass this test, but it didn't happen the first time. And it took us having to sit down and say, what's the problem? What is going on? Why does it feel like I have so much pressure? Why does it feel like we're like split in between? And like you're taking care of your part and I'm taking care of my part. And I think we got into the realization that I need your help. We're in this together. Like we can't be individuals in this. And it was literally when he decided to step in, and he was awesome. He stepped in so many different ways. Like he helped me find a tutor and so many different things that it felt like he was just all in. And at that moment, I think that was like the first few months of our marriage. At that moment, we realized that this is what oneness means. My burdens, my passions, my failures, my everything is also yours. We can't work if we're not working together. It's not just me. It's not just me studying for this exam alone. This is for us. And the moment he did that, my burdens, like the elephant was off my shoulders. It just felt like he cares, and even if I didn't pass the second time or I passed the second time, I felt like he cared enough and he will be there for me regardless. So that's when we realized what oneness meant.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for that example. I think that what I recognize is that there are a lot of ways that marriages can actually exist, but I don't know if that they're healthy. You'll hear different stories about people got separate accounts, and they take the approach that you took. Like, look, maybe we can't agree on this thing, so you do what you want to do, and I do what I want to do over there. I heard some horrible example about how one spouse was responsible for certain bills, and the other spouse was responsible for other bills, and there really wasn't any meeting of the minds. So come to find out the mortgage had been paid in 3 months, and they come to repossess the house, and the other spouse had no idea about it, and that's uncommon. But I wanted to talk to you, and Pastor, what are the consequences of sort of living a together but separate life? Can that work for some? Can some people make it work, or what?
Look, the reality is people are having decent marriages that are not following the concept of oneness. We meet people all the time who, doing okay right? But what we're talking about, the context we're talking about is fulfilling oneness in God. Now, when you put that context in there, you can look good on the outside, but you're not together in terms of the purpose of God. And the reality is that when God brings two people together, it is not just for them. When who was it? Rachel, right? In Scripture, had babies, right, in a womb. Bible called it nations. So God is not ever bringing people together for the sake of both of them. When God brought every partnership you find in the Bible, you will find out God has a system, and I talk about this in my course as well. God will do certain things. For example, he will always equip one for the other. They both have giftings, but that gifting is meant to complement each other. Two, God will always inform one, if the person is listening, what their role is in the equation to fulfill what the other cannot do by themselves. Moses had the individual calling to carry the power of God to the children of Israel. Aaron had the individual calling to articulate the power of God to the children of Israel. Moses, without Aaron, would have gone there, loaded with all this power, can't speak for nothing. Aaron would have gone there, articulate as can be, zero power. And so what we have to do is figure out all these years of development, all these 20-something years of my life, 30-something years of my life that I've been single. What are the specific areas of development that God has taken me through that are now meant to serve my marriage? I'll give you a really quick example. I know a couple, and I talk about them all the time. I should give them a call one of these days. Like, hey, I talk about you guys all the time. This girl was in medical school, and I've known her for years. It seemed like every time the fees were due for medical school, can't find the money. I mean, it was like a joke. It's like, yeah, fees are coming up next week. Watch there be no money. And yeah, there it is. It's like, and every single time, it got to a point where she was about to leave the country because she couldn't stay. Right? She had to go to other countries to do her residence, all kinds of stuff. But every single time, the money will show up at the very last, the 11th hour. I can tell you right now, in her household, she is the one who can be fast asleep on the rocking boat at the 11th hour because the experience that she has in God, the area of development that God has given her is the area of being able to trust till the end. I don't care if her husband ever becomes a pastor or whatever. It doesn't matter. That development is there for her that serves the relationship, that serves the marriage. And so same thing for the husband. God, if we look, there are things that God has brought you through, things that God has given you. Some in my relationship, give me a microphone, I preach to you for 8 hours straight. I just talk to you. My wife can do the same with prayer. After 45 minutes of prayer, I'm like, Lord, I know you hear me. God, I know you've heard, you hear me. I know you do, so we good. My wife is over there rolling. Because that's an area of development. You bring those two together, we've got something that complements, that works together. That really is what oneness is. It's being able to say, I see the grace of God upon your life, and you see the grace of God upon my life, so I respect your grace, and you respect my grace. So now we're going to bring those two graces together to achieve what you and I cannot do individually by ourselves.
Powerful. I really like that. So one thing I want to go into, it leads right into, I guess, the next question. Pastor Todd said something in his book that I really like. The real mark of love is giving. And obviously giving requires sacrifice, right? Ephesians 5:25 says to men, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her. So I guess in order to be one, it takes, like you said, recognizing your strengths, your giftings, and how it can help them. That requires sacrifice, right? I think sacrifice is really, it's a wonderful word. We love it, but it's hard to do. And I really want us to talk about how we prepare ourselves to sacrifice. Can you give us some tips on how men are to sacrifice? How do they dig deep to do things that they might not necessarily want to do or not come natural to them? Like, daddy who's seen it one way, but he's got to make an adjustment. He got to pivot. You know what I mean? Like, how did he do that?
this is a hot one right here, because the Bible explains to us men that we are to love our wives like Christ loved the church. Now, when we say things like I love you, again, in the context of the world, that's cool. Oh my God, that's cute or whatever. The end of the statement is, do I love you like Christ loved the church? That's where it gets all kinds of messy. That's when if I check myself and I say I love you like Christ loved the church, now that's a real check in my spirit. And the Bible does not the Bible does not waste space. So the Bible does not tell us this kind of instruction because it comes easy. The Bible tells the men, it's like, come here, let me tell you something. Pull your ears. Love your wife like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. What does that mean? It means, for example, that the things that we men think, for example, is our right, we need to earn. It was the right of Christ to have us worship him. But what did he do? He came down to earn it. Yeah, exactly.
I'm demanding it.
Exactly. He earned it. So everything we men think naturally, like as a man, is my right. When we start talking about sacrificing, giving yourself up, for me, that's what that looks like. Giving up the things that are your right. Earning those things as though they're not your right. That right there is that sacrifice. And for women, somebody might need to snatch their wig and throw it at the screen right now. I don't know. Snatch their shoe, throw it at the screen. Because the Bible tells us the man's supposed to love his wife like Christ loved the church and give himself for the church. And what did the Bible tell us to do?
To do what she wants.
Right.
Right? I think it's in there.
Right. Submit to your husband as though it is to Christ. Now that right there, the same way it does not come naturally for a man to give himself up for his wife, it is the same way it does not come naturally for a woman to submit to anybody. And what I hear often is and this is so interesting, what I hear often from a lot of women is if he does this, if he is this kind of man, why wouldn't I submit? I'm like, honey boo, let me holler at you. Jesus died for you, and you still don't submit to him. Now, you want to tell me that you're going to submit? This dude doesn't take out the trash on time. He doesn't help cut the okra. And you're talking about, like, if he just adjusts that, you will submit to him. It is not natural, boo. That requires the grace of God to do.
Powerful. So the grace of God is all up in that. I really like that sort of scriptural guidance and how you broke that down. Let me ask you, since we have this wonderful example of Peter, what you did for Tammy, what did you have to do to prepare yourself to make that sacrifice? She said you looked up tutors and you helped her and all that. Like, how did you? Presumably, I know you like Call of Duty. Presumably, you had to put down Call of Duty for some time in order to invest in her. So how do you do that?
It definitely took a lot. There's a lot of communication, a lot of emotions, a lot of pride being swallowed, removing the ego. I would say one thing is, before getting into this marriage, I felt like I was in control of my life. Everything that I needed to do, I got it done. And when we got into marriage, I was still acting as if I was still in control. And, as long as I did my part, you should be able to do yours as well. But then that's when I started to realize that I was never in control. God was in control, and he was, like, during that season that we were in, he was trying to show me that, I want you to be dependent on me. And instead of looking at your wife and seeing what she could do, how about you start to listen to her and see what she needs, because you guys are in this together. So those conversations were pretty tough, man, because some of it was, I need you to wash the dishes. You know,
But what was it that triggered that realization, that brought you to the point where you figured, something's not going right and I need to make an adjustment?
Pretty much the same practical things that we were doing at the time, it wasn't working. And what we ended up doing was, if we're confused, God is not the author of confusion. If we're confused, all right, let's start to ask God. God, can you reveal what it is that we need to do? And the thing about my wife, like, she's amazing. She's hardworking. She's determined. She's very ambitious. So when I see her, I look at her like a superwoman. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking like, yo, you don't need no help, man. You in the gym squatting 200 plates. Really? You really need help? Like, you really want me to help you? And when she really broke it down to me, like, I was like, wow. Oh, okay. I mean, you're definitely superwoman, but even at that, being as strong as you are, you still need help. And that's when I started to realize, like, you know what? Let me. I have to invest in her as much as I'm investing in myself, especially that we're one. So, yeah, I took on the responsibilities of, at the time when she was studying, don't worry about the bills. Don't worry about, cleaning up over the house. I'll take care of all that. I don't want you coming in the house tired and, from a long day of school and still having to study, and now you worried about, cooking or cleaning. So I definitely took those responsibilities. It was tough to swallow. I remember we had that conversation. I was sitting in that kitchen. And I'm like, this is the reason why we bought a dishwasher. Clean these dishes. But, it definitely, it worked out. And God revealing to, you know what, we should look up a tutor. And the person that we actually ended up using was fantastic. And, now I know when it comes to, being in control, just allowing God to lead and relinquishing my powers. I don't want to make it seem like, anything that happens in this marriage, it was our doing. We all we give that credit to God.
Amen. I want to go to Daddy because working 3 jobs while your wife is in school, and I hesitate to say that you might be old school by comparison to the rest of us, and that even if not just for you, there must have been, like Mommy mentioned, cultural pressure to not allow your wife to sort of do that thing. So how did you, I guess, swallow that pride, or how did you manage that to allow that to happen?
It was God's commandment that the man is the head of the house.
Okay.
And I have a very regular quip. I would take the bullet for my wife. So, working 3 jobs, I took the bullet. Fighting my mom, fighting my brother, fighting my family members for my wife, leave my wife alone, I'll take the bullet.
That's that old school stuff right there. That's
all it
that
is.
old school stuff right
In
there.
a nutshell.
They don't make brothers like they used to, taking bullets. Wow, that's wonderful.
I mean, it took it all around. From doing the girls' hair, I mean, Kumi will go to school with the hair flying like this because Daddy washed it and did it. I mean, he did take that bullet, though it is hard. But again, I don't want it to sound like we just fell into it. We had conversations. We had fights. And we had to sit down, and I remember saying, I'll do this with or without you. However, because I had a lot of classmates that the husband left them, it is now my portion. I will not move forward if this is not going to work out for us. And the conversation was very difficult at times. And he doesn't, like he's more reclusive, and I can't stop once I start. And I go. But I had to learn that that was not the way to get things done. And he would have determined I'm going to do this, but because I was going, he'll just say, like, show me your best. Is that all you got? But at the end of the day, yes, he would say, I'll take a bullet for my family, I'll take a bullet for my wife. And many things that has happened to us in life, he actually has done that.
That's wonderful. I want to use my wife as an example as well. When I met my wife, we were in school, and she was superwoman, just like you. So not only was she, a top student, she was vice president of the Bar Association, and the first time I got to talk to her, because she was tutoring other students on how to take exams and how to write and all that. So I was impressed by her from the beginning. But that spirit didn't die. And when she started working, she's working long hours. On top of working long hours, she's joining and leading bar organizations, and she's doing all these things. She wants to stay late after church. I'm like, yo, this is too much. Like, it's like I thought I was prepared to have a sort of modern wife who wants to work and do all those things, and we had kids. But then the reality of it was different. It was a lot harder. I was like, wait a second. I made dinner too many times this week, and you a better cook than me, so why are we eating microwave food again? Like, so it comes and goes, this feeling that you can handle it and you want to support them, but it's difficult, but, we worked it out. So I guess it seems that the commitment has to be there, that you want to sacrifice. Even if you get emotional every so often and, grit your teeth and bear it, I guess that's just the way it works. I want to switch now, though, to, I guess, the women, because as Pastor referenced, the Bible is calling us, Ephesians 5:22 to 23, wives, submit to your own husband as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. Now, we know in the modern world that's seen as offensive to some. What does that scripture mean to you in your marriage?
It's such a hot topic.
We're being real. So
you asked, what does the scripture mean?
what does it look like to submit? Do you agree with that? How did it play out?
To be honest, and I know it's gonna sound like roses and all that stuff, but submission is a beautiful, beautiful thing when it is done well. When it is done well, in the way God intended. Before I was married, I was one of those type of feminist type of girls who would hear something like, who heard the scripture and was automatically like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be able to work. I'm going to be able to do what I have to do. I'm not going to bow down to any man. And I told you how I grew up. My dad did everything for me, and I was also Miss Independent, so there's no way I'm going to just relinquish all my powers, as we like to say. But then when I got into marriage God confirms that this is the man I'm going to marry, and I loved who God confirmed that this is who I was going to marry. It's almost like I wanted to submit to him. It's almost like I trusted who God gave me. And one thing that we always talk about is I believe that God anointed my husband to be the leader of the household. So it's almost like I have to trust that anointing. And I have to trust that he is submitting himself to God. So it's almost like I have to submit to God. I have to submit to God if I'm submitting to my husband, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I look at it. And if it's done well, it's a very, very beautiful thing. I went blank for a little bit. Yeah.
So what would you say to women who find it oppressive, who think that paradigm is outdated and we should do away with that?
It's not. It really isn't. Just because you're a wife that submits to your husband does not mean you can't work. It does not mean that you can't go out and be all you can be. It just means that there's a certain order for marriage that God has it. And if you want to have a fruitful and blessed marriage under God, the way God intended it, it's kind of how you have to do it. Like Pastor Tobiate said, you can have an okay marriage if you don't do it that way. Your marriage will be okay, but from our experience, we've seen the fruit of it. We've seen God's favor in our lives, the way we do it. And like I said, it feels good to me. Like, it just feels right. It feels like I trust this feeling that God has put in me, that this is the right way to do it. And I also trust his leadership. And I always tell him this, even if, say I submit to him in a decision that I know that I can make, even if it was wrong, like what he did was wrong, I still trust that what God is doing for us is going to ultimately be right. So it's not outdated. It's not oppressing. It's not oppressive at all. So
take it to Pastor Toby, because I'm sure in counseling people and talking to people, it's got to be something that you hear a lot. So how do you counsel people or women, or what would you say to help them with this issue on this topic?
I mean, like I said, there is a grace element to it, right? And I love what she was saying when it's done right. But submitting to your husband is less about the husband and more about God. It is less about him, because this is not, you're not submitting to a person, you're submitting to a position, right? So it's not like God is saying, this person is. Think about just leadership in the world. The person who is the leader is not always the smartest person in that context. Whether you have a governor, you have a mayor, you have a CEO, you have a whatever the case may be, that person is not always the smartest or the most experienced or whatever it is in the area. It is simply that there is a position that they're in. Right. It's just a and if a man understands what that leadership is, meaning that you're not only responsible but you are accountable to God, that man is going to be scared to bits to do it right. And like she's saying, if the man is doing it right, then it should become easier for a woman to say, you know what, I can see that he's submitting himself to God. I can submit to that. But even then, it is not natural. For the Bible to explicitly give us those instructions, it is not natural for a man to love a woman like Christ loved the church. The way we men naturally want to love a woman is not the way that Christ loved the church. That's not what is natural to us. We want to control. We're thinking sexuality. We're thinking domination. All these things. We're thinking of being in absolute getting that respect when we don't earn it. That's not the way Christ did it. So and the Bible is telling us to do it this way is because, let me talk to you, boy. This is the way to do it. And vice versa, for that woman, it is the Bible saying, let me just go deep for a second here. Look at scripture in the very beginning. It tells Adam. Right? Adam, don't eat this, bro. Don't eat this. All right? Yeah, don't eat this, right? It's interesting. Look at the conversation between the enemy and Eve. It is appealing to the eyes, the Bible says that she felt. And you will know the difference between good and evil. It was almost like Eve, the devil touched a part of Eve that had a need to be in control in terms of knowledge, to be in control in terms of being able to be in the high. There is something there, and he hit that nerve. She saw that it was good to eat, it was visually stimulating, and that, you know what, she's going to know the difference between good and evil. So she ate it. Since time immemorial, it's a thing that it is not easy. It is not as easy for a woman it takes a grace of God. The same way that it is not as easy for a man to say, I'm going to love you the way that Christ loved the church.
So all women are going to struggle with this, whether they're modern or not.
At some point in time,
since the beginning,
some point in time, it's going to be so. You're going to need that check in your spirit, right? To in terms of how to navigate that, because the reality is, if we're being honest, a man who is after God's heart does not always have the information, the complete picture of life. Go look at all of them. Hey, Abraham, listen, I'm gonna take you to a land that you don't know. Think about that conversation coming home. Hey, babe, we moving. Oh yeah, where? I don't know. Holler at your girl when you find that information out. Like David. David's like, you know what? I'm gonna be king one day. Really, bro? When you become at least mayor, holler at your girl. Joseph, I'm gonna be prime minister, but you're in jail right now, right? Holler at your, it's like if you're after God's heart as a man, you won't always have a clear picture, and so there is a natural difficulty that it's not just like, oh yeah, he's a great man, I'm just gonna submit to him. Nah,
So it sounds like submission is not conditional on what the man does. It's a heart issue. Like it's not really about You have to
be in Christ to really fully grasp what that is. Because again, the firstborn of 6, I was placed in leadership role all my life. My mother made sure that I was the caretaker of all my siblings. I knew how to lead. Then I married a baby of 5 who had women, people telling him what to do. But then married a woman who probably would now want to tell him what to do. No, it's not going to work. I got enough of that of my life. I'm supposed to be the head of this family. It's not that easy. I mean, I knew right from I could speak that the husband is the head of the house. But what did that really mean to me growing up? I saw my dad did so much, and I saw my mom did so much, but I didn't understand that role. But I remember when I had the full knowledge of it, it was like a light bulb moment that things were just not working out. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and it has nothing to even do with career. It could be that we're going to seafood to shop. No, I want to go to Pathman. What do you mean we're going to Pathman? And that would be like a big old argument. And he wouldn't tell me the reason why we should go to seafood. Can you tell me what it is? No, because I said so. No, it's not going to work because you said so. We're going to Pathmark. No, we're not going to Pathmark. He's driving. He got to seafood. And we're sitting in seafood parking lot because I want to go to Pathmark. And I will give him a whole reason why we needed to go to Pathmark. He didn't feel like he needed to tell me. I should just trust that. But I will tell you, it was just like a situation that we had. And Michael Jackson's song was playing. If you want to make a change, you start with the man in the mirror. I remember literally we were living in Avenue I, and I looked in the mirror and I said, whoa. So I can't tell you that it was all spiritual, but through the means.
If God can use a donkey, he can use MJ.
Use MJ.
You know what I'm saying?
And I would always quote him as the biggest philosopher of my era, okay, who the song was playing one day and I was looking in the mirror after having huge arguments, and I said, wait a minute, I got this all wrong. Yeah. And that was the beginning of many, many incidences of success in my marriage. Like, even if I didn't understand it, he's the head, and many decisions that he has made that I'm glad I didn't stand in his way. But there are some decisions that he made that I didn't want him to make. I remember when he wanted to go join the FBI. I didn't want it. But we were fasting and praying together. My prayer was just different. When we were together, my prayer was the same. But in the corner, I was praying something different. And the day that he finally went through everything and he came back home and he said, babe, they didn't give me that job. I said, thank you, God. And then I had to confess to him that, you know, I really didn't want you to take that job. But God eventually, I don't know, heard my prayer. But anyway, I'm just saying that there are many decisions that he would make that I didn't want, that we will go through it and suffer the consequence together. I never once said, didn't I tell you? So
somebody from the IG is asking, how did you drop your expectations?
Oh, God took me through the ringer. It took both of us through it. It was not pretty. The first 9 years of our marriage was not pretty. Even though he was who he was then, even today, and I was who I was then, even today, but things started gelling the moment I started believing that he's Christ of my household. He would say it in jest, and in anger, I would say back to him, you think you are Christ? Oh, Mr. Christ, is that what God, you know, like I would just mock him even with that. And I started praying, and I bet he was praying too, that this is not what we wanted. I remember our 9th anniversary, we wanted to go. Before it was at our anniversary, we started having this conversation, then things started changing because we were talking more. We were communicating more. I was talking more about how I feel, but without being accusatory. I feel this way, I feel that way, not you did this, you did that. And then he'll be like, well, that's not how I meant it. And it'll be like, well, you might not have meant it that way, but this is the way that I felt. Then we went on that cruise together, and we didn't have anybody but the two of us, and we don't like associating with people, so we would get a table just for the two of us. We had no choice, and we realized we need to spend one-on-one time together and speak our mind and give him room for his nature, and he would give me room for my nature. And that's the big, after the 9th year was the beginning of changes that we started seeing.
Let me just, because our live session is about to end, so we're going to go into the next session. We still got a lot more content for you guys. We haven't even gotten to the 3 keys to successful marriage. So I'm going to let Tammy go, but just so you know, as soon as the live comes on, just give us a couple minutes and we're going to come back on. But I know you wanted to say something, Tammy?
No, I just wanted to piggyback. Yeah, like Tobiate is right. It's not natural at all. Like it honestly takes a lot of like talking to yourself, a lot of conversations with God, and a lot of sitting in the car and just swallowing the pill. And I know that it's a daily thing. Like there's so many things to submit to in marriage, especially when as soon as you walk to the door, there's so much to submit to as a wife that you really have to make up your mind that that's what I'm going to do today. I have to do it because it's not natural. You automatically, I come from a job where I'm bossing people around. Hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then I come home and I have to, my husband tells me, oh, so we're not doing this today. And I'm just like, okay. It's a lot. So I would say it takes a lot of like quiet time with yourself, dwelling in God's secret place, talking to God, and just swallowing the pill.
So what are some tips I want to ask you that you would give for, I guess, just like she did, some practical tips? Like how do you walk people through this idea of sacrifice on one side, submission on the other, and it playing out in like day-to-day conversations? Because we've seen a couple contexts, career, right? Seafood versus seafood. But there are other bigger or, just as consequential decisions, like where we're going to live, or am I going to go back to school, or, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. In a spurt toward, because I know we got to wrap up and go into the next session, but listen. It sounds so simple, but like listen, like truly listen when someone's communicating. Not just like hear them, but like truly listen to understand. Because sometimes when someone's trying to communicate a need to you, it's not just about the words that are coming out of their mouth. Sometimes, most of the time, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do in response, right? Just listen. That's the first thing. The second thing is reciprocate. If your wife is submitting to you, what's the reward? You are the reward for that. If your husband is being like a true leader of your home, then reward that. You are the reward. There's a cycle of reward, of reciprocation. Once you break that cycle, there's trouble. So once there's an investment, you need to reciprocate.
I think that's powerful. Recognizing the investment and the attempt, even if it doesn't work out sometimes. Okay. All right, guys. So we're going to end our live now, but just give us a second, and we'll be back with you in a couple minutes. Welcome back, everybody. God bless you. Thanks for sticking with us through the break. So we're just going to move on. I want to change gears a little bit. Whenever I heard married couples talking on like TV shows and that sort of thing, I remember I used to hear something like, I love you more now than I ever did before. And I used to think that was interesting. I'm like, instead of it getting stale, somehow it got better as it went along. 31 years, how does that work? What does that look like?
Take the bullet.
God's goodness. Seeing the children that we have together, having a grandchild now, is inestimable, seriously. It grows every day. I don't talk much, but it's just God's goodness. That's the way I'll put it.
So that over time, when you see what the marriage has produced, that creates or engenders more love.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Oh, you can feel it, what you're thinking?
Well, listen, my wife she's the
talker?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Well, listen, it gets better because you have major fights, you have little fights that bring you back together. Major fights could be so bad to the point where you question, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this again? And I don't know if I share just one major fight that we had. It always starts with the silliest thing. And then when you look back, you're like, whoa, that was loaded, and it brought you to another level. Like, we were changing our bathroom, our master bedroom bathroom. And we went to the Browns. We saw what they did in their basement. We both liked it. We took pictures. We agreed. We were going to do the mosaic, whatever. Everything was set. And then my husband hired a contractor. All of a sudden, they brought stuff that we didn't agree to. And I'm like, wait. And I'm calling him. I was working that Saturday. I'm on my way home. You know, we use my card. We go to Home Depot. He said, oh, no, we got everything. I'm like, what do you mean you got everything? I got home, it was totally different from what we talked about. Again, I trust his leadership to a great length. But there comes a time that I'm like, wait, before we move forward, the decision that goes into changing everything we talked about, I have to hear it. At that time is when my husband feels, have I ever failed you? Why don't you just let me go ahead do this because this is what's best. But I wasn't hearing that at that time. Every material that you laid down was not what we talked about. Unfortunately, because of who I am and the way that I tend to do and the way that he doesn't talk, because he feels like by now you should trust me, I'm doing the best. I went off. Like, we're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. And if you do that, started issuing threats. This is not even too long ago. This is like less than 5 years ago. Whoa. It just, of course, shuts down. The guy quickly gathered his thing and ran out of there.
Escaped from...
He escaped, and he wasn't coming back. And then, 10 minutes turned to an hour, 2 days, 3 days of silliness that started now festing and maturing. And cut to the chase, it really broke down. It turned out that what the issue was eventually was this guy that he had hired, that my husband is a very loyal person. He is so loyal. This guy couldn't do what we need to do. But because he wasn't going to take the job away from him, he already spoke to him. He went and agreed with what the guy was recommending. And he felt like I should just have taken what he was saying. And I unfortunately embarrassed him in front of this guy who holds him in the highest esteem, worked at his job where he's the manager, and I just wasn't having it. I mean, the guy eventually got us the person that we needed, and the mosaic bathroom was done, and my husband was now proud of it, and he shows it to everybody. But it was just one of those things that still does happen, that something foolish, something simple, I could have handled that differently. I could have said, okay, can we just stop and let's talk later on? No, it went on. So, again, but in incidences like that, when we eventually talk about it, and I realized what I had done to him, and he now realized what he should have done with me, then solidify the relationship, and then we move forward even further and make things even more beautiful. Glory be to God.
So the battles actually lead to peace that makes you appreciate the other person even more.
In reconstruction, revitalizing, everything just gets better even with that.
Okay. So I like, because there's two sides to that. The blessings of the marriage over time as they build up, you appreciate that, and you, I guess, you're proud of the commitment that you made. You're like, look, God is working in this one. And then you, from the other perspective, even when it's not going well, when you get through those, you come out on the other end stronger. So I think that is a message to people who might be struggling in their marriages, that they should stick it out and not give up, that maybe that turnaround, that turning point is just around the corner, and that there's hope even when you have, big fights and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you see, as I'm listening to her, I'm like, that's what, she's hitting all these critical things, and sometimes we go from A to Z, and we forget B all the way through, the context of it. She was talking about, notice what she said about, these are the moments when things get better. When we listen, when we talk, when we communicate. How about we do that straight up front? How about in the moment of it, we just have a culture of having conversations? Because at the end of the day, he wanted to be heard outside of mosaic tiles. It wasn't about the mosaic tiles. He was in defense of his character. This is the kind of man that I am. That is not the kind of conversation we could just be like, well, I just like this colors instead. And for her, it was like, yes, you are the head of the home, but you know how important this is to me. You're taking away from me the opportunity to be in the decision. If you can't bring me in to the decisions about mosaic tiles, how are we going to talk about the real estate mega, business we're about to start? So she's feeling threatened about my position in the partnership, and he's like, well, my position as a leader. And so we gotta have truly listen. For me, that's so big, because what happens to a lot of men, whether actual introverts or extroverts, but men, is that there is not enough space sometimes to fully express. And it takes the grace of God over a woman to be able to say, all right, I'm going to just put my feelings aside for a second and give you the emotional space to express to me the matters of your heart as a man. That right there is so uncommon. And for a man as well to be able to say, you know what, this is the logical thing to do. This is what the logical plan is. And as a leader, this is the decision I think we should make. But decision aside, logic aside, that extra rib that the Lord put in you, that what they call woman's intuition, and they call it woman's intuition, that is straight up the Spirit of God. That is straight up an ability that God has given a woman. I see logic. I have calculated the cost. Here's my spreadsheet of what we need to do. But I need to rely on you as my wife, that the things, that the intuition that the Lord has put in you, that needs to come to bear in the decision, so that we're combining logic and the Spirit of God in you for that. If we truly listen, half of the arguments we have will not happen. And when they do happen, they will be short-lived.
You can literally go from an argument that makes you look like the worst person in the world, or even me look like the worst person in the world, to when you reconcile and the argument's over, you just overly love that person. It's the weirdest thing, and I think that's what keeps us going, and that's honestly just the grace of God, because it's not magic. It's like, what else could that be? I literally detest you right now. So, babe, I just want to cook for you. How does that happen? It's the grace of God. It's honestly
so,
the grace of God.
oh my goodness, I can't this is so critical because you see, in those moments, you know what's happening? It was like a moment ago, I felt threatened in my identity and my place in life, in marriage. That was at the bottom of it. But because of the intervention of God, or because of the way you listen to me and you understand me, I feel known. There is a core need that we have, all of us, to be known, to be seen, to be understood. Oh, that's what you meant? That matters to me. Sit right here. Tell me everything about it. Oh, that's what I meant. You matter. That's why in that moment, it is the greatest gift we can give to each other to say, I see you, I validate you. I want to cook. Look, just whatever. I'll cook for you. Whatever it's going to take to just keep that Eden going. I want to do that.
And that's the validation because, again, here he is. He's a loyal man. He's a man that is a man of his word. If he says, I'm coming 2 o'clock, he'll be there. If he says, you got my Mercedes Benz, you can have it, he will not look back. And then I felt like I didn't remember that might be the issue at that time. I just was so focused on mosaic times. And eventually when the argument was over, I was like, done it. Like, I not have known that was, because he would be like, yeah, but it's okay, just go downstairs. I'm like, what do you mean go downstairs? I'm telling you, don't put that there. I mean, in the heat of the moment, I just wouldn't hear it because my need just at that time blocked my view.
I think that's interesting. We have different tendencies, and it takes sort of emotional awareness that, you know what, maybe something else might be going on here. He's got somebody else, a stranger here, basically. You know, let me cool it and come and talk about it later, and maybe there'll be something else at play. But sometimes I feel like in the moment it is hard, and the problem is we respond to our emotions very quickly, and sometimes good things don't happen from that. But we've been dancing around and we've been talking about it. I want to go to the 3 keys to a successful marriage that Pastor Todd talks about in the book, because I think it's very related to what the discussion we've just been having. He says that the 3 major keys to a good marriage: 1, knowing each other's needs; 2, knowing how to talk to each other; and 3, knowing how to resolve conflict. So I think you just gave an example of that. We discussed how that plays out. But I want to start with, though, we're going to circle back to resolving conflict and that sort of thing. I want to go to knowing each other's needs. That's what he says is one of the key ones. So Pastor Todd, the book says that women need these 3 things from their men, right? And obviously it's not an exhaustive list, but he says that women need security, affection, and communication. So let me ask with Tammy, do you agree with that? Disagree? And which one of those 3 are the most important to you?
I definitely agree with that. Can you read those 3 again? Sorry.
For women, with 3, the most basic thing they need are security, affection, and communication.
Oh, communication.
Okay.
Communication. Yeah.
Talk about it.
I've seen our marriage without communication, or the times that we fail to communicate adequately. And when I say communication, I don't mean just talking. I'm talking about like transparency, being able to like understand you before you even explain it to me. You know what I mean? And the same both ways. And active listening. Like sometimes he can say something, and like say like, oh, do you like my outfit? And he'll be like, it's all right. But then I'm like, the way you shrug your shoulders and did your eyes, you didn't do that before when you said it to right. So tell me how you really feel. Like actual communication, I feel like it takes our marriage like far.
I had a conversation about this yesterday. You were talking about how you guys end up talking for a long time, longer than you talked about that. How does that work? I guess given that I knew that story, it makes sense that communication would be important to you, but yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we definitely communicate, and I think that's what gets us so far in our 2 years of marriage because of our communication. And just for me, learning how to be more transparent. I'm an open book. I'm learning how to, I would say, volunteer information. But if she was to ask me any question, it would literally turn into a conversation that could go on for hours upon hours upon hours. But yeah, as far as communication, yeah, I think that's definitely something that was very important to my wife. And I mean, we've been communicating since the beginning of, our relationship. I would say that that's definitely our strong point.
Mommy, same question. Security, affection, and communication. Do you agree with those needs, and which one of them is most important to you, if you agree?
I agree. My husband is, and he takes a bullet for the family. I hate to say that, and it sounds like it, because it gives us security. Like when I first went to Albany, I had this other car, and in his mind, he just kept seeing me stranded on the highway. He decided he's gonna go get me a new car, like a reliable car, and like I didn't even have to ask for that. So then, about Nigeria, I mean, security is like a done deal with him. Glory be to God. Passion in his own language, I have learned to know that that's his language, and I think he has he understands the way that what I cherish to be passionate too. Communication, 31 years, we're still working on it. It's very, very important to me. My husband I trust him so much. I trust my husband more than I trust myself. He doesn't communicate much. He'll just go do. He'll do things for us. And I'll be like, whoa. Or you could tell him, oh, Daddy, we're having something tomorrow, whatever. And you assume when you tell him, I'll know. Well, he'll get dressed. We're going to the Taiwas. Whoa. Whoa. He'll be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you. And then he expects me to get dressed. Okay, he forgot to tell me, but he expects me to get dressed. But I've learned to get dressed and give it to him in the car. Okay, rather than not get dressed and make him look bad or whatever. Because initially I would just say, I'm not going. But then I'll get dressed now, and it's easier when I do that to give it to him in the car, and he'll be very apologetic and all that. I'm like, oh, I'll do better. I'm sorry. But initially I'll be like, I'm not going. You're going by yourself because they told you had 2 weeks. I mean, like, I'll just mouth off.
I actually want to speak to that. I had a very interesting time of working that out in my own marriage. Okay, so one time, because I think of my wife as superwoman, and I think she's so capable and that sort of thing, there are things that I took for granted that, she can handle that by herself. Like, why do I need to do that thing for her? And what she later communicated to me, that she grew up watching her uncle, her grandfather, whoever it was, do things for her without asking. Things that could be done by them, but they would do it without asking, and she took that as a sign of security. And so I'm thinking that she's too, powerful a woman for me to sort of treat her like she can't handle this. And she's looking at me like, don't you love me enough to do this without me asking? But we had to communicate for us to figure that out, that she wanted the security and me doing it for her, even though she could do it herself. And I had to learn that was important to her. So it's interesting, the way you talked about him just doing it, like security is important. You want to say something?
I think Daddy was going to go, and then where are you going to go?
Yeah, all three are key. But, security she has, affection she has. But communication, sometimes I forget, so that has to be worked on. What can I tell you?
Still in progress, still loading after 31 years, thank God.
To that, and I know we're going to come to the section about what men's needs are, I think it's important for us to understand what these things mean at the core of them. Right? So security, for example, obviously we're not talking about physical security, like someone's going to come beat me up so you can take, you can fight, or like I don't want to be scared that you're going to do something to me. Like, we're not talking about those kind of surface things, right? We're talking about for a woman to feel that she matters enough in that relationship that her needs are going to be a priority for you, and that her well-being is something that is so forefront for you that you're the kind of man who will put yourself second before she has to fight for it. In other words, she doesn't have to fight for a position. In other words, you are
earning what should be your right, and that you are giving that right to her. Right? So it's like she's over here oblivious to what she could be, but the same way Christ sees in us what we could be or what we can be, not just what we are, right? That at the base of it is great, to value her to the point where you are constantly treating her as though beyond what she is now. 'Cause to the point where she's like, why you all that, like, and about, like, why you all, like, even from a even from a dating perspective, that's what gets a woman. It's like, wow, I mean, I knew I was cute or whatever, but this dude calling me like 7 times a day. In other words, he is showing me that I am more valuable than even I think of myself. That security, that really is at the
I'm a
core
little
of it.
frustrated. Are you telling me I don't have to go to the gym anymore? Like
Bro.
physical strength is not.
Bro, you better hit that. You
I can
better
save
lift
myself
them
some
dumbbells,
time.
bro.
I'm kidding, obviously, but well stated. You mentioned I do want to go to the men. In the book, Pastor said that men need these 3 things: honor, respect, support, and sex. Peter, is that true? And which one of those is more important to you? We're being honest now, so.
I do agree. It is true. Out of the options that you gave, which was most important, to me, is the honor and respect. In marriage is that honor and respect. It goes a long way. I feel like God created us in His own image, and being the head of the household, because He created us in His own image, God is a jealous God. He wants to be praised. He wants to be worshipped. So me being a husband, it's like I also want that type of praise. I don't want to feel like I'm less than, or I don't want to feel like I can't lead this household. I see a lot of, especially on social media. They bash a lot of men. Like they're cowards. They don't know how to lead, or why would I submit to certain individuals? But sometimes I feel like if you were to give that allowance for that individual to lead, we're all made, in the image of God. So I feel like when a situation comes, especially if I'm, taking care of the household, if we were to go grocery shopping, right, and there's a bunch of bags in a car that I have to bring in, and if I'm bringing 4 bags, and if you were to tell me, like, oh, wow, babe, I see your muscles, it's strong. I should appreciate.
You get that extra
work.
energy.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden, the dose of 4 bags.
Hold on,
Babe, listen, sit inside. I got this. I will bring. Matter of fact, I'll bring the whole car inside the house. And I said, you know what? Sit there. I'll put the groceries in the fridge for you. You know what I'm saying? Clean the kitchen, all that. All right, I got it set up for you. You want me to preheat the oven? I got that too. So definitely honor and respect goes a long way. And it actually, it gives me more confidence to want to really lead the household. Like, you know what? Like, you're giving me this space to, listen, I have a vision. This is the vision that God has sent me. This is what we need to pray about. This is what we need to start to do. But if I didn't get that, I would start doubting myself. And at that point, who cares about the support? The support is not going to be there. And then even when it comes to sex, I'm not gonna want to have sex with you. It's like at that point, sex will be meaningless because I don't have that. I don't feel, that honor and respect. So I feel like,
Super powerful. I'm glad you said that. I want to go back to that, but I want to hear from Daddy. What do you think? Of the 3 things, honor, respect, support, honor/respect, I should say, support and sex.
Well, you give what you get. I mean, if you respect your spouse will respect you in return. And And you have to give praise when it's due. Seriously. She did a bachelor's, she did a master's, she did a PhD. You have to honor and you have to respect those achievements in her. I remember when I was in, the kids were, this was what, 12, 13 years ago? The kids were getting into college, and then I said, where are we going to get money to sponsor these children to go to college? So I went to the LPN school, and I failed pharmacology. And
so you went back to school thinking, okay, I'll
when
start
I was
a new
44,
career.
when I was 44 years old.
Wow, okay.
I was the oldest. They made fun of me. They made listen. Because I was in the classroom with some 17, 18-year-old children.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I said, you know what? I'm not going. I'm not going back to that school. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing that program. No. No. So the clip was, okay, so when Bosun goes into college, and then he fails out in one course and he said he's not going to college, what are you going to tell him? That was inspirational. Very important to me. So I said, you know what? Do or die, I'm going to go back to this program.
Wow. So that support was important then.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was, for me, honor. She said, listen, integrity. You have to pass it down to your children. And sex, yeah, and if and when you can give it, it's very important too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You know,
What's so funny? I really, the honor and respect thing is really important. One of the things that I thought that I was observant and I thought that I knew about women just from being an adult. When I got married and really talked deeply to my wife, I realized there are aspects or experiences that women have that men don't appreciate, that we don't understand. And it's the other way around. When you go out in the world, being a man is so competitive. All we do is compete with other men, right? About who, whether it's, at the job, how much weight you can lift, how fast your car is, this promotion, how much money you make, all of these things. And it can be discouraging when you feel like you don't measure up. When I come in the house, it is important to me that instead of competing and being, somebody's putting me down because they're so much greater, somebody comes in the house and looks up to me and or puts me on a pedestal. That, I didn't realize how important that was to me. And glory be to God, my wife does that so well. Like, I can't believe that I'm so blessed that she does that. I make this point all the time. I'm Nigerian. My wife comes from a Jamaican background. And when I come in the house, she omankunle for me, right? Like, for those who don't know what that means, like she
Courtesies,
yeah, she sort of curtsies like traditional Nigerian women do. And she picked that up as I never asked her to do that. She simply watched other Nigerian women, older, and picked it up, and she just started doing that. We went to a marriage, sort of something like this, a marriage discussion or seminar one time, and there was this older married couple, the Akifaleyes. The wife calls the husband. She doesn't call him by his name. She calls him Adeorimi. So my wife, oh, that's a good one. So she started calling me that. So, and I thought it was silly at first, and if she don't call me, then I know some. Now I'm so used to it that she doesn't call me that. Like, what's going on now? Like, So she'd be like, Adeorimi, please, like whenever that's how she appeals to me. I give her anything she wants, like when she starts like that. So I really appreciate it. So ladies, respect and honor. Pastor Bo has this saying, he goes, respect and honor. Like, it is important to us. It matters. You see how sex came behind the respect and honor. I thought sex was the most important until I got married and realized, sex is great, but that respect and honor will get you through. So yeah, man.
You that right there. That's what we're talking about with the whole submission. You need an inspiration from God, and it's such a blessing to hear that, right? We men, so there's two types of respect that I want to talk about real quick. There is the positional respect of just this is your position in the home, right? But a lot of the respect that is overlooked is the emotional respect. Culturally, almost all cultures, there is a certain tendency to acquiesce or to put priority on the woman's emotional needs. To, you know, I always talk about the fact that even terrible men know how to treat a woman good to get what they want from a woman. But very good women, right? Many good women don't know how to do that for men, to really understand men. And that emotional respect is that the things you're going through as a man, the things that concern you, the things that you are emotionally concerned about, whether you are acknowledging that they're emotional or not, I can see through my intuition, which is really the Spirit of God, if I'm listening to it, right? I have respect for that. That stuff matters to me. So for example, when you are upset, I'm not over here now flipping it and making it about myself and why should you be upset about me. I'm like, wow, like that is a show of emotion that I need to address that. You are excited. I need to allow you to be excited, because when you look at a man's range of emotions versus a woman's range of emotions, culturally, when a woman is really upset, she's allowed to emotionally express herself. She crying, she throwing the camera all over the place. We'll all be like, yo, what's wrong? Can you sit down? Can you get us some water? You know, like, you know, whatever. If he's a little upset, we're running out. We're talking about like he's lost his cool. So just having that permission to express, and having a woman say, I respect your need to emote, to have emotion, and that I am taking just as much responsibility as I expect from you for your emotions. So when you are not feeling great, when you are feeling down, I'm taking it upon, I am the Calvary, and I need to do everything I need to do as a woman to help you feel great, the same way I would expect you, if I was over here in the corner crying, I would expect you to drop everything to address that. That right there is uncommon for a man. The way that this works is that God is a just God. God is a just God. When we were talking earlier about the fact that God gives us these skills, these abilities differently so we can complement each other, think about this flip. When a woman leaves, I talk about this all the time, when a woman leaves her home in the morning, goes out into the world, there is positive feedback. Positive feedback. Somebody on the train trying to open, trying to let you in first. Somebody at the door trying to open your door. Somebody at, so a bunch of women got work husbands that they didn't even ask for. Like there's positive feedback. Even if nobody talks to you, you see that dude at the train looking at you like, hey man, if I didn't see that ring on your hand, I'd probably talk to you right now. There is feedback. When a man leaves his home, even the best, sharpest, whatever, well put together dudes, it's like there's no feedback. So even if women are out there like he's kind of fine, it's like, well, I'm not gonna go up there and talk about like he's fine. I'm just gonna pretend I'm twirling my hair or whatever, checking it, whatever. There's no feedback. And so the only place that a man really can get that emotional feedback is when he walks through the door. And the reality, the way God is just, is that even though a woman can get that outside, the one that means the most to her is the one that she gets inside. So we have volume for the woman on the outside, but depth is on the inside. And then for the man, we got volume and depth happening on the inside. But either way, inside is where that is. That is why in Proverbs, when you look at all these scriptures that says, beware of the strange woman, all this, and we talked about this at the conference that I was at, all these threats, all these possibilities are talking about a woman who can use her lips. Not her hips, her lips. Beware of the lips of this strange woman. Why? Because that when a man hears those kind of acknowledgments and honor from a woman that is not his wife, it is a strange, that is what makes that woman strange. It's not because he's got horns, it's because, wow, some woman on the train called me intelligent. That's like so disarming for men, because even in our own homes growing up, right, we talk about little girls like, oh my God, you're so cute, you're so smart. Ask all your guy friends, what were the compliments everybody paid you when you were a troublemaker, running around breaking things. So it's so real. A lot of men are starved of that. That's why, as a woman, if you think, we talk about like, a woman needs, for you to speak tenderly to her and stuff like that, that's cool. But what God is trying to teach us is that men, we need to start that first. But the flip side of that is that God is saying, women, you need to take that example and then respond. What happens in a lot of marriages is that it's coming one way, it is not going back out to the man.
I remember hearing all the time, there's this thing like, she ain't even that cute. I can't believe he left her for this next chick. I'm like, you see, you got it all wrong. It wasn't about her looks.
Yes.
She was whispering in his ear when you was tearing
She
him
was
down.
talking
and,
right.
Yeah, there you go. So it
When
don't matter
he
how
wa-
cute she is.
Yeah.
That's a lack of understanding of what the need was. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
When he's with her, he feels great, he feels secure, he feels needed, he feels honored. Every single time, that'll win. Every single time, it'll win.
I was saying, like, it reminds me of Samson and Delilah. As much as in the Bible, you know, everybody looked at Delilah as like this prostitute, this hoe. But for some reason, Samson, even though he knew that she was betraying him, he kept coming back. And as I read into it, it's because he felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And she was saying things that maybe he wasn't getting on the outside. He wasn't getting. And even though he knew that she was going to eventually betray him, he still kept coming back. And that's the comfort that Delilah gave him.
Nice. So that's great. So I want to move on to the next key to a successful marriage. Knowing how to resolve conflict is another key that he mentioned. And my wife and I have been married 10 years, like I said, and I remember this date. About a month after our wedding, we went to another wedding, and it was a close friend of my wife's, and the pastor at that wedding, I remember the date, October 9th, 2010, and it's because of something he said in that sermon that we repeat up to today. He said the offenses will come. And what he meant by that was, look, y'all gonna fight. There's no way to avoid it. Don't, in movies, it ends happily ever after. In poems, in children's stories, it ends happily ever after. There's some fight in that in real life. Disagreements and fights are inevitable in relationships, especially one as intimate as a marriage. There's just no way. You guys are so closely wound together that you guys are gonna rub each other the wrong way, one way or another. Let me start with Mommy. What's the difference, though, between a good fight and a bad fight? We know that it's going to happen, but how do we know whether like this is healthy versus, you know what, this is just silly? Seafood and Stop and Shop.
That was silly. That was silly. But the story behind that, I mean, it's not even something that we can eventually really publicly share. It just turned out that there was a reason why he didn't want me to go to Pathmark. But he just didn't care enough. I shouldn't say he didn't care enough. He felt I should have just followed his lead. Later on, I realized why. But anyway, a good fight for us happens every maybe 5 years, a real good one. And those are the ones that mature us. Those are the ones where we both just go into our corners and we just kind of like just let it all out. And when we have situations like that, I just recently realized that as I would be in my corner in the last maybe 15, 20 years, I would be praying. But pride still would be in there somewhere that wouldn't make me make the first move. And he'll be like, I'm always the one making the first move. But I realized that he would be in his corner too, praying. And eventually, things will just boil over for us, and then we'll sit down and have a conversation, and the conversation will be so long that well overdue, and it would improve our situation. The silly fights, God help me, I just don't know. It just like in the spur of the moment, and we'll have it. There'll be like a little spat here and there, but it'll be over. And because I think over the years we are able to realize what is really silly. Like, really, you gonna fight about that? Like, gosh, an example of a silly fight, I don't even know. It would be so foolish. I've told you that da-da-da-da-da, and I'll be like, and then you're gonna have to tell me again, or something like, well, you can tell me all you want, but then it wouldn't last. It'll be like, okay, so what do you want? You want me to fix your bowl of rice? No, it's okay, honey, I'll get it. You want a cup of tea? I mean, like, we would just finish it like that.
Let me ask you this, because Song of Solomon, I love this line. It says, the little foxes that destroy the garden. And I've always hold that analogy, like, you know what? Basically, don't let these little arguments or spats turn into something big. How do you avoid that?
It's hard, but I think the major ones that I say comes every 5 years, it's now, it's spreading out more and more. It doesn't happen. It used to be like every week when we first got married. Like major, it would be something foolish that would start, but it would be just him protecting something on his end and I'm protecting something on my end, and it would just not be communicated. But then as we got to know each other, it would be like every year, it would be like, now it's like 5, 6 years that things like that would occur. The little one though, I think over the years we prevented the little one, because the little one would just come, and then before you know it, it'll be in the middle of the night, you'll be seeing something going towards your way, and you'll be like, okay, whatever. Then we just yell at each other. I mean, like, whatever. But how do you prevent it? I think understanding eventually, knowing that when it's something that starts so small, just exploded, there's something behind it that is beyond what we are saying to each other. And then praying, or just one of us saying, okay, calls me mommy, we got to talk. And then when he says, mommy, we have to talk, that's the time that Yabo needs to shut up, clip it, put a padlock on it, and just hear him. Before, I would be defending myself. But now, it'll be like, whenever he says, mommy, we have to talk, I now know that I need to stop. I need to stop. And, again, I have to say, it's not that easy. It's just the power of prayer. And we have really developed that apart and together. Like every morning at 7:30, no matter where we both are, a call will get initiated by him most of the time, and we have to pray. And we have to put the day that we are about to encounter in God's hand. He'll say, okay, mommy, pray. I'll say, okay, you pray. No, I don't ever say you pray. He tells me who is praying for that day. So that's what I think we've been doing that for many years now. Many, many years now, that I think that's what really has been helping us.
That's a wonderful practice. When I first got married, obviously you guys bring two different backgrounds to the marriage. And I don't want to tell on my mother, but I'm going to have to tell on my mother to make this point. So my mother, I knew that she loved us, but when she was mad, man, the words would just start flying. But because she loved so hard when she was happy, I knew it was just because she's mad right now, right? Okay, so now take that to my marriage. I thought, hey, look, I love you. So what I say when I'm mad and we fight, don't worry about that. And my wife was not having it. She was not having it when we got. But it was so. Look, I put a ring on your finger. Like clearly, I love you. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not leaving. I'm not going nowhere. I know. I was just upset. I used to just cover everything like my mom did with, look, I'm just upset. I love you, that sort of thing. But basically, we obviously had different ways of resolving conflict or expressing ourselves during conflict that we had to resolve. So can you guys talk to me about how you, learned to resolve conflict before you got married, and like how you made that adjustment once you got married?
I would say that our conflicts, ultimately it does end productive and constructive, but our thing is the process to get there is sometimes long, and like we have to fight to get there. And that's where we are now, honestly. We have long fights, long drawn out fights, but we don't allow it to, we don't just sleep on it. We don't allow it to fester, right? We always make sure at the end there's either a prayer, there's something constructive, there's something that we unlearned and relearned, there's something that we debunked in the situation. We just will always want to grow, but to get there sometimes it's just petty. And we call it petty fights. We have petty fights. And something that we know that we shouldn't be doing in those fights is using, and we learned it from you guys, trigger words. You and Sister Jen, trigger words. And we know each other's trigger words, and we know that when we use these certain words, those are fighting words. And sometimes, because of our emotions, some of us intentionally use those words, and it's a fight like that. But I would say our successful fights is when we don't do that, and we really try to understand why you're acting that way, or why you felt that way, or where did it come from, or is this something that you were raised doing? Like you said, we come from two different worlds, so it's probably something that you learned. Like for him, for instance, he grew up, and I'm not putting you out there with that, but he grew up where he didn't have to show much affection. He was more of a logical, work hard type of person. And I came from a family where it's so much, I love you, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm sorry. And it's like he had to learn that for me, if you want to resolve something with me, you have to kind of say that a lot. And it's to this day, it still doesn't make sense to him, but he's doing it. He's doing it. He's doing really good. Like, it's almost a lot. Like, he does it. But I would say that a successful fight for us is when we don't do our petty fights.
And one thing that my husband, he sets boundaries too. He finally sat me down one day, and I really wonder how much of this you remember. Okay? He said, yeah, but you need to remember certain words I don't use for you, no matter how angry. And he doesn't ever raise his voice. And I don't understand how you can find and not raise your voice. Like, it would just tune me out, or it would say one or two things, and that would be it. And he told me, he said, have you ever seen me raise my voice at you? And then, so he sets that boundaries that took me years to adhere to, that he doesn't like when you yell at him. It doesn't matter what you are saying. The moment you raise your voice, all bets are off. He would not hear you anymore. I mean, what good is a fight if you don't raise your voice?
Fighting. That's what.
So he set that boundaries that I constantly have to remember. I mean, I still kind of yell, but I have to remember that.
I wanted to piggyback on my wife. Yes, we do have the petty Betty, petty wop wars. Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I think when emotions are involved, my first instinct growing up, and yes, she hit it on the spot when we have two different upbringings. My instinct is to solve the problem right away. After we solve the problem, then we apologize, because there was a mistake that was made. We need to fix this, But with her upbringing, it was the show the sympathy, show the empathy, apologize, see what's going wrong, see if she's okay, show the emotions, and then we can figure out the problem. So in this marriage, it's challenging, because anytime something goes wrong, I'm already in defense mode. Like, wait, why you mad? What, I didn't do it. What, did I do it? How do we fix it? And it's but she's still in the emotion while I'm trying to figure out how to fix that problem. But learning now jumping into making sure that she's okay. Forgetting about figuring out the problem. We could figure that out later. And tapping into her emotions. Then things started getting a little easier. I'm not going to say that it's easy now, because there's times where I would try to remain level-headed as much as possible sometimes, and I try to not be petty, but yeah, she could use some words where it's just like, oh nah, man, tie you off. So you want to fight? Okay, so we gonna fight then, But yeah. Once we get through that, and then we actually start communicating, because on that level, I'm not listening to you. I'm just waiting for my time to respond, so I can say what's on my chest. And that's the worst, because then we'll just keep going back and forth. But once we get to that state of, I want to listen to understand, because you're upset at something, or you're disturbed. I want to make sure it wasn't something that I did, or and I remember at the marriage retreat, man, instead of how you said it, instead of looking at the problem face to face, like, we actually take the problem and we both look at it at a distance and see, okay, what happened. That helps so much, because now when situations happen, I'm looking like, okay, oh, she's upset. I gotta tread lightly. Babe, are you okay? What's going on? You all right? Cause I know that if I don't enter that situation right, all hell's gonna break loose. You know, I think it was Pastor Aveja that was talking about, you know, women are the incubators, and anything that we give them, they multiply. So if she's upset, if I don't come in there the right way and she gives me hell, I already know that I wouldn't be able to sleep well tonight because, you know, it would get crazy.
I want to say something, and then I'm going to speak to you. I want to make a football analogy. So whenever, take a quarterback, for instance, right? He has, as quarterbacks go from different levels, high school, college, and maybe they make it to NFL, sometimes they have to adjust their mechanics, right? And you can make this analogy with any repetitive motion, right? But, so you train for a certain mechanic so that you improve. However, when the pressure comes on, you revert to your old mechanics. And what I find is that I know intellectually, right, that I should take a step back and, as you said, look at this problem and we do it together. But since my default mode is logic and whoa, see, I didn't put the dishes there. Who put the dishes? It was you now. So, since that's my default, when the ire, when the anger, when the words and the attitude come, you resort into your default mode. So what I find is that just like a quarterback or anybody who's trying to unlearn something else and learn something better, you have to be intentional about it. So it's just not going to be by osmosis that you get better at these things. You have to be, okay, you know what, I'm going to throw it the same every time. So when I see that scowl, okay, I'm not going to jump to a defensive mode. I'm going to think, hey, baby, what's wrong? I'm going to start with the soft words. I'm not going to react to and get defensive. It takes intentionality, but you get better with it over time. And depending on whether or not I had coffee that morning or I had a good night's sleep, I'll do better or worse. But, you know, it's something that you got to continue to do. Yeah.
You know, conflict management. Let me start by saying this. A good fight is not a fight that simply ends. If our fight just simply ends, we haven't fought good. A good fight is the fight you grow from. So that, see, there's a difference between I talk about this as well at this event. There's a difference between the end of conflict and the introduction of healing. There's a difference between ending a conflict and introducing healing. Because we can end the conflict. All right, you know what? Sorry, babe. All right, cool. You know, it's you all right? You good? Let's agree to disagree. Or like, you know what? I don't want to fight. You know, like we can end the conflict, but the healing has not taken place. That is why we will be at the same location 2 weeks from now. Because healing has not taken place, because conversations have not happened, because one person feels that they are not understood. They haven't gotten a chance to be known. This dishwasher issue upset me so much. It's not about the dishwasher. I am stressed, and I'm trying to express that to you, and you are needing a dissertation for me to tell you I'm stressed. Like you know what I'm saying? Like that's what it is. Like being able to be known. And so it is so important when we're handling conflict that if I want to end the conflict with you, that's the first step. But I also need to know that I need to introduce healing. What do I need to do to heal, to be a participant of healing in this conflict, so that we do not arrive back here, and B, we actually grow. Not just that we don't arrive back here again, but that we grow. That conflict was beneficial. That was a good fight right there. But unfortunately, what happens to many of us is that we are so focused on ending conflict that we don't spend time healing. And so we end up being in the same place. And that's why sometimes when I do trainings on like conflict management and stuff like that, you know, I talk about the fact that, you know, you can, how do I say this in a quick way? If you feel that the person who is apologizing to you is apologizing for a lesser issue. You are upset on a scale of 1 to 10, you are at a 9 because it really pained you. And that person is giving you an apology based on, something where they think is a level 2 issue. What are you going to say? You're going to say, yeah. They're going to say, I'm sorry. You're going to be like, all right, cool. But there's a gap between 2 and 9, 7 points. So you are actually not healed. And so what happens is that you receive the apology, but emotionally you're still disengaged. You still step back because you're apologizing right now, but you don't know how much you touched me. And so you know what? It's cool, but whatever. And so now 2 days later, the person's like, well, I apologize. I said I was sorry. No, you use the words I'm sorry, but really what you said is, I really don't want to deal with it. End this fight right now, and let's keep it moving. Your emotions don't matter. How you feel doesn't matter. As long as I feel good that we ended this conflict, can we all be good and move on? And that right there, that is how conflict continues to extend, and then you will now start seeing those petty fights. Because yesterday it was about you hurt me. Today, now you put the dishes out, and I'm flipping out, and you're thinking, why are you flipping out because of dishes? It's because now you've created a negative environment, a negative ecosystem for micro negative things to fester and grow into their own ecosystems in the conflict.
I think that's powerful. That's deep.
My husband has to call his job.
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I just also want to say that's why we decided a long time ago that we were not going to use the word for major fights. We're not going to use the word I'm sorry. We're going to get to the bottom of what happened and say that I promise to do better. We had to use those words because sorry just sweep things under the carpet. So we decided we're not going to sweep things under the carpet. So we do not, when it's a major fight, when we sit down to talk about it, we don't use the word I'm sorry.
That's
We
the
will
way to do
say,
it.
okay, I promise to do better. You know.
Yeah, I don't work well. I'm sorry.
That's not good enough.
Yeah.
And by the way, in these issues, it's less about the words we use. It's about what we're actually communicating. Because I bet you, if you use those words, I'm sorry, and you carried the weight of that statement, of truly communicating that, and we figure that out, that's going to start to unlock. And so for him, maybe it's I'll do better or something else that works, but that's what it is. It's like people want to feel that you understand the real pain, and the real pain is what you are apologizing for, not for the presence of conflict.
Doesn't it matter though if we're going to use the word I'm sorry? Doesn't it matter at what point that word comes into conversation? So that it doesn't sound very dismissive.
Mommy is hitting. That's what 31 years will do right there. Absolutely, because if I'm telling you that you hurt me, and 2 seconds later you're like sorry, it's like you don't know, you have no idea what you're apologizing for.
That moment, like, isn't it acknowledging? Like, say I remember one time I fell on the snow, and he just automatically, like, he didn't say sorry. He just wanted to like fix the situation, and I'm like, but I'm hurting. Can you acknowledge that I'm hurting? Can you just say sorry? I love you. Are you okay? He just wanted to fix the situation. So I feel like sorry is more of, to me, it's more of just acknowledging my feelings at the moment, not really resolving it. But.
So I love this conversation, and we could talk about this all night. I think this has been a wonderful, really great discussion. What I wanted to end with, because I feel like if you look up keys to a successful marriage, if you just Google it, one of the things that comes up is communication. Like, it's so trite. Like, it doesn't help. But communicating, if it was so easy, you wouldn't need to advise people that communication is important. And I think that there's an issue between men sometimes not expressing themselves enough, or women not knowing how to get stuff out of men. So I want to give Pastor Toby the last opportunity as we're about to end about how we can communicate more effectively. Sure, we know we need to do it, but if you got a man who's introverted, or a woman who's hot-tempered, like how do you do that? What are some good tips that we can end on to communicate more effectively?
That's great. Communication really is less about the volume of words. Because if you are an introvert and you are receiving communication and you are present and you're asking follow-up questions and the person is saying this and this and you're saying, well, tell me a little bit more about this, or help me understand it from this side, and you're really present to try to understand, that will carry just as much weight as somebody who's like, what? Girl, sit down. What? Like, it's not about the volume of words. It's about being present, fully engaged. Not talking about trying to defend yourself or that. Just be present. Because in that moment, what you're communicating is your emotions right now, they matter enough for me to pay attention. I may have an opinion that I want to share with you 20 seconds from now, but not at the expense of you getting your time to share yours. And I think that if we do that, we create an environment of safety. That's really all it's about. Safety. I might not even be able to resolve your issue right away, but you know that you're safe. You know that you can talk to me. That's really all it is.
Thank God for that. That was wonderful. I know I've enjoyed this. I hope it was a blessing to everybody else at home. Just giving glory to God for this discussion, for the wisdom that was shared here. And I want to thank the panelists. Thank you to the wall. Thank you, Pastor Toby, and thank you to Mami Olofala. 3 sessions, relationship goals. I pray that you guys will win at relationships from what you've learned here. God bless you, everybody.
Take care. Awesome.